Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and yawning already? Come on. Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of Mary versus the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And you know what?
What?
I think maybe this will be the end of season 2 because that whole energetic thing still a little weirded out.
How do I top it?
I don't know. I'm so afraid of what season 3 brings.
All falsetto. Or my attempt at falsetto.
Oh, God. Well, I think we will keep it going for one more episode when we hit 50. 50 will be the end of season 2.
Oh, okay.
Does that sound good?
Sure.
But that is not this episode.
No.
This episode instead is episode 49, Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Have you ever seen it?
Yep.
Was this a mistake?
No, I think I liked it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I was a kid. I don't think I appreciated it because at the time I hadn't been to LA, and
Sure.
I actually lived on Venice Beach, and I think part of it takes place on Venice Beach.
Here's what I vaguely know about the movie. One, I believe it has Richard Dreyfuss and is it Bette Midler? And I guess they are a married couple in Beverly Hills, and a white guy who is homeless goes and lives in their pool. I think it's Nick Nolte. Because as we've discussed, I guess in the last episode, I have trouble remembering who's Nick Nolte and who's Gary Busey. And I don't have a firm concept of either. I'm not even sure if I've ever seen films with either of those guys. But
don't they both have pictures of them with messy hair?
Sure. Yeah. I know one of them got busted for a DUI.
Yeah.
But I couldn't
Maybe
tell
both
you.
of them, for all I know.
Sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of these disheveled gentlemen plays a homeless man who is living, I guess, in their pool. I don't know. For some reason, I have an image in my head of him in their pool.
Huh.
And I don't know beyond that. I think it's a remake of a French film.
To be honest, I really only remember one scene.
Well, don't tell me what it is.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm guessing. It's probably class conflict.
Is this another Columbo episode?
Sadly, no. Yeah, we're watching this because last week we watched Beverly Hills Cops, and now we're going with Down Out in Beverly Hills because, the titles reminded me of each other. I don't know what happens in it. I'm sure at some point they somehow evict him. So I'm sure what we have is a couple of high-strung, wealthy, successful Beverly Hills living people who are very upset that a homeless guy is living at their house. I don't know how he got there. I don't know how they get him out. I'm sure it ends that way because it is the 80s. And,
Maybe he turns out to be a prince.
Oh, sure. I'm sure that's what happened. I don't know. I mean, we may end up with a My Man Godfrey situation for all I know. It's funny now that I say that, although I don't think it actually is that type of a situation, but I'll bet you this does sort of feel like one of those films from the 80s where they're kind of hitting the beats of some of the films from the 30s. Well, kind of the way that Trading Places feels kind of rooted in a Preston Sturges sort of, universe. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like that.
Sure.
I don't have much of an opening for this one. I don't know what to say about it. I'm sure that Richard Dreyfuss does a lot of angry yelling.
When we went out to LA, you'd been to Hollywood. I don't think you went to Beverly Hills, though, right?
We drove, we were on a tour bus. We drove past
Okay.
Beverly Hills. No, we did. I mean, we went down, Rodeo Drive. That's in Beverly Hills, right?
I think so.
So, yeah, no, we were on a tour bus that went around that part of LA.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we also did Hollywood. We saw from the outside the back lot of Warner Brothers and things like that, Paramount and all that. So that trip was actually, believe it or not, 10 years ago, 2 weeks ago.
Jeez.
I know, right? It was my first time in California.
Yeah.
We were visiting some of Dennis's family. and I got to see where Dennis used to live. He lived right on Venice, like in Venice Beach, right on the beach.
Yeah.
Your apartment is now what, a dispensary?
Well, no, the apartment's still there, but it's a dispensary below it. But yeah, I remember when I was living there, like outside my outside where I lived, there was like a Britain's Got Talent thing. This was before like America had really glommed on to those British reality shows.
What year was this?
This was like 96.
Okay.
And so like somewhere I have a video of me walking in the background of that. Like I set up a camera in my apartment, like of me walking around the back.
Really?
Yeah, I think I wave or something. I don't know. But
Wait, is this a videotape that might be in our house right now?
yeah, somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
I'll have to look.
Lost Dennis footage.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't really know much more I don't know anything about the film. I just remember seeing that it was, I suppose, a popular movie. I don't know why it stuck out to me. It's just something I never saw.
Sure.
So I figured, why not put it on the list?
Yep.
So let's go watch it.
All right.
You may find yourself living in a shotgun shack. You may find yourself in another part of the world. You may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile. You may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. You may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by.
This movie starts off with the least loyal dog in the world.
That first mutt is terrible.
And,
He's a jerk.
And the thing is, when I saw him, like his hair's all over the place, and you know he's like a terrible looking dog. And
Scrappy. He's scrappy.
He's scrappy.
But then
And
turns out he's scrappy too.
I remember the dog being a big part of the movie, and I did not think that dog would just leave him and we'd never see him again.
I was surprised that they don't bring the dog back at all.
I thought it would end with him finding the other dog and then whatever.
He does get replaced with a completely different dog.
Yeah.
I won't say it's an upgrade, because I don't believe that you can upgrade dogs. All dogs are good.
I don't know, two different colored eye dogs is...
I mean, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Bowie dogs.
So you saw this in the theater, right?
Yep.
Your parents took you to see this.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question, actually. Because it's a sex comedy.
Yeah, pretty much.
And why did your parents take you when you were 15 to a sex comedy?
I have no idea. But
that feels weird.
The thing is that, like, so, you know, when I saw this, I was young. I hadn't had sex or anything, so I didn't know. So the sex scene is mostly him, like, massaging her by, like, pulling her legs and stuff.
And by him, we mean Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
As Jerry, the homeless man.
Right.
And her is Bette Midler.
Right, sorry.
Right, okay.
And that's, like, the only... Like, it's not really graphic or anything.
No.
But, I guess we see his butt every now and then.
We do see his butt several times. Like, we see him partial nudity several times through the film.
Yeah, it's pretty much like NYPD Blue.
Yes, exactly.
Levels of nudity in this film.
Yeah, this isn't Euphoria or anything. No. Yeah, it's not a graphic sex scene or anything, but they're definitely having sex. But as you said, the massage.
A younger person, you don't really realize, like, how much stress can cause pain in a body.
Yeah.
and how much, like, you know, massage is equally as welcome as orgasms.
It can be. Oh my God, yes. I've had only one professional massage in my life. It was a birthday gift to myself when I turned 40. I went to a spa and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I have tension up in my shoulders constantly because of my job, and I've never felt so good in my life.
Obviously, we need to go out and find a homeless man, bring him in here.
Oh, are you proposing something? See, you have to fish them out of your pool. You can't just go out and pick one up.
Yeah.
All right. Which is, of course, this is the premise of this film. Let's start with the fact that it is a remake of a French film from the 30s, which is itself a film dramatizing a French play from like 1919 or something.
In that play, like it's Boudou or Baudou or something.
Oh my goodness, please do not make me pronounce French.
Yeah.
I can barely pronounce English.
Anyway, it's
called what? Buddha, whatever is saved from drowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's this homeless guy. He tries to drown himself in the river Seine.
Yeah, the Seine.
And a rich guy saves him and I guess tries to rehabilitate him, and he proceeds to charm everyone in the family, and eventually he wins a lottery. So he becomes as rich as they are, but he marries the maid, or he goes to marry the maid, and it ends with them on a wedding barge, and it sinks, and he swims away or like floats away back to his vagabond life.
Really?
Yeah.
That is quite different from how this film ends.
Right.
And we will get to that because I don't know how much I like the ending of this movie. It doesn't feel right. And I think that's because it's changing the source material.
Yeah.
You know, it Americanizes it too much, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it's made by Paul Mazursky.
Yeah, who is the guy who directed, I guess his most famous film is, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice?
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen. But
it's about swingers and...
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 70s.
In the 70s. And like that's kind of a frequent theme in his films, apparently. Like he did a film that was kind of inspired by Jules at Gym and stuff like that. So not necessarily swingers, but like open relationships, polyamory, things like that. So this is the only one of his films I've seen. I'm just vaguely aware of... Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. He directed Harry and Tonto.
I don't know that.
Yes, you do. That's the one with Art Carney and his cat.
Oh!
Yes, that's a good movie.
You know, we liked that, and we told someone else about it, and they hated it. I forget who it was.
Well,
you know
it's
what?
got
Now
issues.
that I think of it, it has a lot of the same beats as this does.
Oh, okay.
You know, like in that it's got social satire, but not really. You know?
It's not biting as much as satire should be.
Yeah, it's
And
like TV satire, softened edges.
Yeah, Terry Southern, it's not. So, yeah, the premise of this film is Jerry, played by Nick Nolte, is a homeless man living in Los Angeles. It's him and his dog. And the opening of the movie is kind of like the opening of They Live, where it's just focusing on the homeless population because it's the 1980s and the Reagan Revolution has eviscerated any sort of the social safety net.
Right.
So the homeless population exploded in the 80s. I didn't know that. I grew up in Philadelphia seeing homeless people everywhere, as you still do. And I didn't know it wasn't like that before I was born. But that's what the 80s are kind of like. That's why you see it in films like this or in films like They Live, where they're like the homeless even in Back to the Future, they've got a homeless guy.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't really a thing. You know, I'm not going to go into a whole thing, except that it is relevant, you know?
Right.
And so, you know, it's interesting that in the 1930s, we had the problem and we had Hoovervilles, and then we had the same thing happen in the 1980s, but we didn't call them Reaganvilles or anything. I'm saying homeless a lot. I realize houseless is a, term being used more often, and I do understand that. And there is a reason for that because, your home is wherever you feel like, so people in their tent, that is their home. So they have a good point. I'll try to correct that as we go through this episode. The music that they start with, this threw me, is Once in a Lifetime.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show, David Byrne.
I know.
You seem to never leave, which is fine.
Yeah.
I love your music. But it's specifically, interestingly enough, the live version from Stop Making Sense. So, of course, I bolt right up. So we're introduced to Jerry, and at the same time then we are introduced to, what is the name of their family?
The Whitemans.
The Whitemans.
Yeah.
So, well,
Subtle.
gee, that's subtle. Yeah. So we're introduced to Dave and Barbara Whiteman, who are a wealthy family living in Beverly Hills. Dave is played by Richard Dreyfuss, and he is the manufacturer of hangars for hotel chains.
Yeah.
And so he has factories over in Tijuana, and he's trying to get into the Chinese market, and so he's got all these business deals going on.
He apparently also has a trailer park somewhere.
Yeah, they allude to the fact that he also owns a trailer park.
Which, he doesn't, they don't tell us that, but we eventually figure it out.
Yeah, it's a little weird because it's just sort of mentioned offhand later in the film when he's trying to set Jerry up with a job. And it's just like, whoa, where did the whole trailer park thing come from? Because, again, that's going back to, the housing issue.
Yeah.
This film has this whole, kind of tangential... I would love to know if there was more about, the housing crisis of the 1980s than this film actually has on screen.
So we did some reading on this film. We watched it yesterday and spent the whole day looking stuff up on this film. And there's just not a lot on this film.
No.
It's mostly about the casting.
Yeah.
But
it's-
like it not really much background on the film because it just feels like there's missing scenes or something.
Yeah.
There's something feels kind of cut up about it. But.
Right. And like it's not that the film feels incomplete necessarily, but it just feels like there's certain context that might apply to things going on in the film that don't come clear or just were actually like left on the cutting room floor. But there's not a lot that we could find written about this movie, which is kind of odd because as far as I know, it was a hit.
Until the Snyder Cut is released, I don't know if we can talk about this.
Oh, you want the Mazursky cut?
Yeah.
All 4 hours of...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, man.
Leaving in all of the hardcore scenes.
Yeah.
Dave and Barbara live in Beverly Hills, and she's a housewife. They have 2 kids,
Max.
Max and Jenny.
Yeah.
And like Jenny's in college, Max is in high school, and Jenny is anorexic, and there are some really uncomfortable jokes about her eating disorder in this.
Pretty much whenever like all the rich people get together, problematic stuff just comes out.
Extremely. You know, there's casual racism, jokes about the eating disorder. There's all kinds of yeah. Whereas oddly enough, the situation with their son Max is handled a little bit better.
Yeah.
In the film, they eventually call him androgynous, but I think today I'm saying he, but he would probably come out as like non-binary.
And one of his friends in the band actually did
is trans.
Yeah.
Like is what, Alexis Arquette?
Yeah.
Right. I don't think she has any lines, but she's just one of the members of his band.
Yeah.
There's a whole running storyline through this film where he is like a young kid with a video camcorder and he wants to be a filmmaker and he wants to be an artist and he makes music and all this stuff, but he's also doing some gender queering, a little bit of cross-dressing, but not like wearing a dress, more like putting on makeup, but also wearing essentially like very new wave clothes.
It's hard to tell if that was just played for comedy.
I don't know.
And
except
like,
that the resolution's really nice.
Yeah, nothing's really commented on. It's just like, oh, and this is my son. Or
right.
Whatever.
Yeah, but it's weird because on the one hand, like most of the film, you know that the reaction should be like, oh, get a load of the freak.
Yeah.
Except that towards the end of the film, Jerry comes to him and says like, yeah, you know what, you need to be who you are and your family's going to love you, so don't worry about it. And that they end up doing exactly that. It's weird because I don't know how Mazursky is actually thinking about it versus how the audience is thinking about it versus how we're reacting to it in 2022. But anyway, so that's the setup of the family. Dave and Barbara, they love each other, but they're not in love with each other. They don't want to get a divorce,
right.
But they don't have any passion for each other. And so he, of course, is sleeping with the maid Carmen, and she is getting all of her frustration out through shopping.
And also she has like a team of, I mean, she has a guru.
Yes.
They have like a dog psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Who is just not working.
She's throwing herself into yoga and meditation, and I'm watching this and I'm like, oh no. I've been throwing myself into yoga and meditation. Honey, don't worry. Our marriage is in a way better shape.
Our finances are not quite
nowhere near.
Yeah.
The house they live in is the perfect image of in my head is the 1980s
cocaine decor.
Yeah, it's very much the cocaine decor Twitter account.
Yeah,
a lot of pink and neo Art Deco, and I love it. It's basically how I remember kind of high culture architecture and design in the 80s.
And actually, like when we first meet Dave and Barbara, they're in bed and there's this painting of them above them.
Yeah.
And they're both, like, he's wearing, like, light blue. She's wearing pink.
Mm-hmm.
And in the painting and in bed. And the painting looks very uncomfortable, and they look very uncomfortable.
Into their life comes Jerry because his dog runs off. This is why he gets depressed.
Kerouac.
It's the dog we described in the beginning, and the dog runs off because the dog's a jerk. A woman comes and basically lures him away.
Yeah.
Obviously, they need a catalyst for why he's depressed, and you can't just simply be, because he's homeless and life is hard when you live on the streets, even if it's Los Angeles and the weather's always pretty good. But also, like, he does have this attachment to dogs through the film.
Yeah.
So he stumbles into their yard through the back alley and puts rocks into his pockets and throws himself into the pool. And I think this is like right after Thanksgiving.
We see Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, no, I know. We see Thanksgiving dinner. And that's mostly just like developing the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole film takes place between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve, I guess.
Yeah.
But because it's Southern California, it could be any time of year. I mean...
Well, in the fall, it might flame up a bit.
Oh, is that when the fire season is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
You know, Malibu catches fire a little bit,
Oh, that's just Christmas lights. It's
Yeah.
fine. But so it's when his dog runs off and he's very depressed and he goes and he throws himself into their pool and tries to kill himself. And Richard Dreyfuss, Dave sees this and, goes to save him. Basically takes him into the house and is like, this is suddenly like kind of going to be his emotional fulfillment is getting this poor guy's life back on track is what he feels.
Yeah.
And so then like the rest of the film is essentially trying to domesticate this man.
Well, I guess the first third is My Fair Lady. By the middle of the film, it's essentially turned into The Bishop's Wife.
Yeah, it totally. Oh, that's a good point. Give him clothes and, feed him and give him a shave. And Dave takes him out to lunch and tries to set him up with like getting his life back on track. And the thing is, he ends up gelling really well with the rest of the family. While Dave kind of isn't because his mind is always on work because he's trying to get this deal to have his hangars being used in Chinese hotels. So he's very focused on that. And he's also very focused on Carmen, the maid, and not so much on Barbara. So Barbara is very neglected. Jerry ends up just kind of becoming a part of their emotional lives to the point where it almost feels like they're kind of using him. Like, not consciously. I don't think they mean to, but they're definitely using him in a way that you can tell through the film he's getting uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
This all kind of comes to a head because not only does Jerry sleep with Barbara, he also sleeps with Carmen. And then eventually he sleeps with the daughter, who is technically an adult, and who gives really strong mezzo-soprano vibes. You just gotta go and watch it, but kind of like just first of all, the way she talks.
Yeah.
It's weird. She really sounds like her. But also, it's the whole I'm in college and I'm using big words type thing. And, it's something that I watch and I cringe a little because I'm like, yeah, that was me. I can't believe I didn't get slapped. Of course, Dave then becomes very jealous. So it is, and then it does become, as you say, like the bishop's wife. And so that Jerry is very much Dudley the Angel, fixing everybody's life and making, everything more emotionally fulfilling. And Dave is getting angrier and more jealous.
So in The Bishop's Wife, eventually the whole family figures out how to behave like humans again.
Yeah.
In this movie, no.
No. Well, I don't think that's entirely true.
Barbara has an arc.
Yeah, Barbara absolutely has an arc.
Max has an arc.
Yes.
I feel like Dave doesn't, like...
Dave doesn't really have an arc. He just sort of eventually acquiesces to, hey, you've been kind of terrible. But he doesn't really face consequences for that. Jerry and Dave have a confrontation because Dave is extremely jealous and is feeling like you're replacing me. And, Jerry's response is, yeah, okay, I can leave. It's interesting because they do bond at different points. Like, there's a whole scene where Jerry and Dave spend the night in Venice Beach. This is back when Venice Beach was really a lot more like homeless people, and
I'm pretty sure it still is.
It was scuzzy. I guess it's probably still scuzzy.
Yeah.
Although we haven't been there in like 10 years, so who knows? I mean, the market could have changed things by now. And so they do have like bonding, but Dave is just so jealous that he does try to drive him away. Except, of course, the rest of the family won't hear it. It all comes to a head on New Year's Eve. It comes out that Jerry slept with Sally, the daughter. And I think that was like the last straw for Dave.
Yeah. So before this, Dave goes to see the maid, Carmen. And Jerry has given her a bunch of Marxist literature.
Yeah.
And she's realized she's being exploited by the system. Mm-hmm. Which she is.
Which she absolutely is. Yeah.
And so, this is just one of the many things that's kind of going all, coming to a head at this party.
But because she's like reading like Marxist literature, like, it's, I guess, supposed to be a little bit of like social satire, but is it because she is being exploited by them? So,
see, that's the thing
it's
about
weak.
so
Yeah.
that's our problem with this movie is the ending. Like we're still puzzled by this ending.
So here's what happens in the end. Basically everything blows up at this party, and then they all wake up the next morning, kind of hungover and trying to put everything back together. And Jerry's just like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. I don't need any of this.
But the thing is that the whole movie, Jerry's been like kind of spouting these things like, oh yeah, like I had a Rolls Royce in grad school in London, and I was in ashram in Oregon,
yeah.
and then like I was dating Linda Evans.
But he's also like, there's a scene where he's playing Claire de Lune on the piano, and he says, well, when I was on the concert circuit, I would play this, So he's always telling these stories about his life. At one point he talks about being from Brooklyn, from Flatbush, which, amused me because my stepdad was from Brooklyn, and he does not sound like my stepfather.
See, that one, like that was what really dated this movie for me, because it's like no one remembers the Brooklyn Dodgers anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Like, there's definitely a line between people that remember Brooklyn Dodgers and the rest of us.
Yes, yeah. Like I still hold a grudge just for family reasons, but
for me it's the A's, of course. But
yeah, well, see, yeah, exactly. But who remembers the Philadelphia A's at this point?
Who remembers the Kansas City A's?
But yeah, so it all comes to a head where, he starts saying, yeah, I kind of made up that thing about the Rolls Royce, and I made up the thing about the ashram, and, so it slowly comes out
but his thing to Carmen is like, oh, I just got those at the supermarket. It's like, there's still books.
Well, yeah, I know.
Who cares where he got them?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're not really like a Marxist leader? It's like, well, no, he didn't say he was, and it's not like he didn't, like, yeah, that's such a weird, thing to admit. Of course he got it somewhere. Where did she think he got it from,
See, that's the thing about
Brezhnev?
Because that's the thing about this movie. Like, I feel like I don't know him at all. You know? Like, he's still a stranger by the end of this film.
He really is. And so the only thing we know is true is that he can play Claire de Lune, but, know, at one point he says that, he was, like, an anti-war activist in the 60s and got in trouble for faking draft cards, which apparently Nick Nolte really did get in trouble and went to jail for at one point. And
then he went on to bowl with
with Walter Sobchak, and it's funny as I'm watching this, I'm like, there is very strong the dude vibes from his character actually. But so we keep tap dancing around the end of this movie, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. He goes to leave. He puts on all of his old clothes, and he goes out, and the dog, the family dog, he's bonded with throughout this film. And the dog goes to leave with him. Yeah, the dog didn't go along with anyone until he came around. Yeah. And so, of course, this dog replaced his old dog who ran off, and that's sort of like the film coming full circle, because he's going to go off with the dog. I guess. Well, I think it's the idea, because they go and leave out by the alley, which is how he came into their lives, with the dog, and he starts to pick through the trash, pulls out like a can of pate, and starts to eat it from the can and tries to get the dog to eat it. And the dog is just like, I'm not going to eat garbage from the garbage. And he's down on his hands and knees in his old clothes, eating garbage. And the family comes out and just kind of all looks at him and smirks. Are they smirking? Or are they... Well, see, that's the thing. I feel like there's a certain amount of condescension, but maybe, like, I don't know. Like, I suppose the whole point of the film is they don't want him to leave. They want him to stay in their lives. And when he's down on the ground eating garbage, and they all come out and they all look at him and they all kind of smile like, come on, you want to come back in with us, right? To me, that's condescending. Yeah. So I took it as smirking, but you're right. It's probably not meant as smirking. I thought they were like, come on back. Like that. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And it is condescending, but I don't think they meant it as condescending. People don't always mean to be condescending. They just are. So he does. He picks himself up and he goes back into the house with them. And that's... No, he says like, no, we're going to go back and get a cappuccino. He specifically says I guess I can go back for a cappuccino. Yeah. And that's the end. And that's it. But I don't like that ending. No. I don't. Here's the thing. It's not that I don't like that he decides that he's going to actually stay with the family. And I don't, whatever their relationships are, that's although, boy, that's a minefield. I mean, I've never had to live in a polycule. Looks complicated. So it's not that situation at the end is wrong, but the way they get there emotionally doesn't feel right. Because they get there through him being humiliated. The whole movie is based on the idea is like, oh, he's homeless. We can help him because we're rich. And the whole message of the movie is like, no, they need him way more than he needs them. Yes. They go to Venice Beach and they meet up with his friends. And Dave is like, oh, maybe I could be homeless. And he's like, you wouldn't last 10 minutes. It seems like the whole point of the movie is that they definitely need him more than he needs them. Right. But then there's this ending. And it's like, why is he going back? Like, yeah, what does he get from them that he needs that is compelling enough for him to go back? It's not just material needs.
Like they make it seem like oh, we're a family, like, come on back,
Yeah, but I just
which doesn't seem right.
I don't think it gets there.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets there emotionally. The original French ending where he goes off and decides to go back to being a vagabond makes more sense.
Yeah.
And like they could have gotten somehow to a place at the end of the film where he has an emotional reason to stay with these people, but this film just doesn't get there.
And Carmen, like that's weird.
Because I just don't think the screenwriter knew how to make her a real person with any motivations other than what the script needed at the time, or to be funny.
I think what the problem with this movie is that Paul Mazursky just wrote it, directed it. Everything comes from him.
Okay.
I think he lives on Rodeo Drive.
Okay.
And I think he is Dave.
Oh, I'm sure.
This is all Dave's point of view.
He doesn't understand Jerry.
He feels like he's doing Jerry a favor somehow.
Yeah.
or doing all the Jerrys of the world a favor.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? We've skipped over the best scene in the entire movie.
Which scene is that?
Early on, there's a scene where Dave is trying to get with Carmen, and the dog is barking at them because the dog is like, the thorn in their side. He's the one that's saying there's a problem in our lives.
Yes, yeah. The dog is like embodies there are problems here.
Yeah, and Jerry eventually sides with the dog.
Yeah.
So the dog, like he sees that Jerry's trying to sleep with Carmen, and the dog is like, no, this is not the stable family unit.
It's amazing that you speak dog so well, hon.
The thing is that they keep having the dog do like human things.
Yes,
like,
they do.
Like it's kind of like Aster in
Yeah, it is like Aster.
and the Thin Man, where he's always like, oh, you're doing something shameful, I'm gonna cover my eyes, like
yeah,
not like a dog at all.
Right.
So anyway, the dog like hits the fire alarm, or he hits this alarm system.
Right. They have like a home alarm system.
And immediately 2 cop cars come and a police copter come. Mm-hmm. And so like Dave is like, it's all right. And Lance, like of course the cop's name is Lance. He's like, Lance, it's okay. Don't worry. It was an accident. These houses, they're all far away from each other. There's walls. Like you don't see any other houses. It's like this kind of fantasy land that they live in. So out of the darkness, a character we've never seen before, we did not know this was going to happen, but suddenly Little Richard appears.
Right.
And is yelling.
Yes.
Saying, I am a black man. I bought a house. I am rich. I spent $3 million on this house. I was robbed last week. I called the cops. No one showed up because I'm a black man.
Right.
It is an amazing scene. And he's yelling as only Little Richard can. It is powerful, and he is just getting it all out.
Yeah. And it
not holding back.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's a good scene. At least, like, he's got a point, right? But the film doesn't do anything with it.
And the way it's filmed is just so great. He just comes out of the darkness, out of nowhere, and there's like a helicopter light shining on him, and he's yelling this out, this whole frustration that, of course, he has.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing scene.
Yeah. But it's weird because, again, this film wants to do social satire, and like, that scene's good, but then it doesn't do anything with it. It's
like J.J. Abrams, where it's like, oh, here's a lot of good scenes, let's put them all together.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily knit together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird that Little Richard is in this film, not because he's fine in it. He's a lot of fun, but like at the party at the end, he plays piano, and like there's a whole scene where they're playing Tutti Frutti. He's not playing Little Richard though.
Yeah,
his name in this is not Little Richard. His name is
Orville.
Orville like something. He's just like their neighbor.
But he's like a '50s rock star who became a record producer.
Yeah, exactly. So he's basically Little Richard.
Yeah.
But then he's playing Little Richard music.
Yeah.
Like he's literally playing his own songs in the movie, but he's not Little Richard. It's, huh?
Yeah, it's very weird.
It is a little weird. Yeah. It's a little too fourth wall breaking where you're just kind of like, no, wait a minute.
Apparently, there's like tons of fourth wall stuff though. Like apparently, like Richard Dreyfuss drives by a Jaws poster, and like there's.
Oh no, it's a theater. Like when he's driving down a street in Los Angeles, past a whole bunch of theaters with marquees. I bet none of those theaters are there anymore, by the way. But yeah, one of them is playing Jaws.
But there's all these like lines that reference movies that all of them have been in and that kind of thing. It's very,
which is fine. I mean that stuff's fine. But yeah, it's always a little weird though, where it's just like, does Little Richard exist in your universe, or is he? Was that song written by this Orville guy now? I don't know. So it's not important, but it's always a little weird when movies do that.
And it's Little Richard.
Right.
Just call him Little Richard.
Yeah, just have him be Little Richard. It's fine. It's a fun movie in a lot of ways. Bette Midler's fun in this. This film, oddly enough, was put out by Disney. It's Buena Vista, and it's definitely an R-rated film, though. There was a time period where Disney was doing fun, like kind of light comedies for adults.
So this was Michael Eisner's one of his early films.
Oh, okay.
And basically, he was like, "We have to bring Disney back." And he was like, we're just going to go for it. And we're going to do R-rated films. We're just going to do things differently.
They did a bunch with Bette Midler. Like Outrageous Fortune, I think, is also from that time.
Ruthless People, I think, was out the same year.
Okay.
This is 86.
Yeah. And I think that might be Buena Vista.
Yeah. And they kind of saved a lot of money on this film because they got two seen as washed up stars in Richard Dreyfuss and Bette Midler. But she hadn't really had a hit since, the 70s. Richard Dreyfuss, he was out of rehab. He just had a car crash where he was on cocaine and all kinds of stuff. So this, both of them were kind of this was them as they were down and out on the upswing.
They were down and out in Beverly Hills as much as anyone. This is definitely one of those films from the 80s where we're redoing beats from the 30s. Yep. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Obviously I always think about Trading Places. Feels like that. This definitely falls into that, and if this had been made in the 30s, I think it might, maybe Lubitsch or somebody would have directed it because of the kind of sexual sophistication of the themes and everything.
He would have had a better ending.
Oh, he would have had such a better ending.
And I don't know how Bill and Ted and Bob and Terry or whatever that movie is. I don't know.
Well, I do not remember that excellent adventure.
Anyway, I don't know how that ends or something, but I just feel like this feels like a movie of someone is rich and doesn't know how to connect with audiences anymore.
Yeah, although again, the movie was popular, so it's interesting that because the whole New Hollywood thing had died, studios sort of reasserted themselves with blockbusters, but then also these kinds of films that just feel like throwbacks to the studio system in the way that they tell stories. Right. So that's one reason why I kind of like doing this podcast is I'm fascinated by those types of movies in the 80s. Then, of course, just fell out of fashion again once the 90s came along. I still kind of like those kinds of comedies, though. I mean, there's nothing innovative about them. They have rhythms that I think I watched a lot as a kid, and so then, I don't know, I find something kind of comfort food about them. One thing I find kind of interesting is this movie does not have a whole lot of music for the soundtrack. I guess there's orchestral stuff, but in terms of songs, there's not a whole lot of them, but they're all extremely famous songs.
Yeah.
So, it both begins and ends with Once in a Lifetime, that one specific version.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fine. It kind of does fit the film anyway. So, and I'm always happy to hear Talking Heads. And then you have Little Richard playing at least twice because he plays Tutti Frutti and then he plays something else.
Didn't they play the original Tutti Frutti in one scene?
Yeah,
and then he played a new song.
Yes,
which apparently was a hit.
But then there's only two other songs other than Claire de Lune.
Yeah,
and it's weird because they're used for very short snippets, and the two songs are California Girls, but specifically the David Lee Roth version, which is fine.
The real version, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then the other one is 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds, of I Love L.A. Yeah. You can barely recognize it, and yet it is blared really fast, and it's just kind of wait, did they just play I Love L.A.? Is that Randy Newman? And it is, but for half a second. It's really weird. The music in this film is really weird. This is kind of scattered and not used very well, except for the beginning and ending and Little Richard.
I wonder if it's cheaper to use 10 seconds.
Well,
given
that we got in trouble with the Tom Petty estate, maybe this was all Mazursky could afford. It's interesting. And one thing, I remember saying to you as we were watching last night, was this film progressive? for the time? Or did we have like just a terrible backslide for like 20, 30 years? And then we're finally like clawing our way back to it. And now, given all of like the anti-trans bills and all of the, you know, the don't say gay bills going through, you know, are we going back again? I find it interesting that this film, which was a big hit and a mainstream film in the mid 80s, was, you know, giving this message that today could get you in a hell of a lot of trouble in Texas. Do you know what Whig history is?
No.
Okay. Whiggish history is an Anglo philosophical concept that is unbelievably bad for us. It's Whig, W-H-I-G. And it's this idea that history is like a progressive thing where things are constantly getting better. It's almost like that evolution of man chart. And that as time goes on, things always get better and we become more enlightened. And the past is when they were all stupid and now we're all very smart and we're going to be even smarter in the future. That's not how life actually works. In reality, it is an ebb and flow. And you have times where people are very progressive and you have times when people are very regressive. So that in the 1920s in Germany, they had all kinds of openly trans people walking around and it was not a big deal. And so what happens is the Nazis come along and burns all those books, and that's what those book burnings are of. And then you look at the 1970s and into the early 80s and you had a very, you know, androgyny and non-binariness and bisexuality and homosexuality. David Bowie was an icon, right? And what happens? The Reagan Revolution, the Thatcher Revolution, and all sorts of like revanchist attitudes and AIDS come along, and you have the same sort of like terrible homophobia and stuff. And so, you know, then time goes on a little further, and in the last few years, you've had more people kind of standing up and saying, you know, be more accepting, etc. And now what's happening is you're having all these bills come through. Whig history, where the idea is that things always get better, is a lie, and watching films like this is a good demonstration of where it's a lie. I'm sorry, man, but I take this really seriously because I get really frustrated when people are like, things are always getting better. They don't always get better, man.
We're definitely not smarter these days.
No, man. You know, ask Ukraine. I don't know. So anyway, yeah. So in terms of like the whole Max storyline, I found that really fascinating just because of where we are right now in 2022, because things are not looking good. So that was Down and Out in Beverly Hills, written and directed by Paul Mazursky and starring Nick Nolte, Bette Midler, Richard Dreyfuss, and Little Richard?
And Gary Busey.
And no, I now know that's not Gary Busey, that's Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
Okay, you can follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter. You can write to us. We are maryvsmovies@gmail.com. Please write to us with any comments, questions, complaints, or suggestions. We always want to hear from you. We are available on Apple Podcasts. You can rate and review us. Please do that. We've gotten a few, 3 reviews, which is pretty great. Thank you very much for those of you who've reviewed the show. We really appreciate it. You are all very kind.
Thank you.
You can listen to us through Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us on Stitcher. We are, available through like Overcast. Basically, you just go to the Libsyn website, plug in our RSS feed into whatever your podcatcher of choice is, and we should be available to your ears. Next week is a big deal.
Is it?
It is.
Wait, is this the 49th episode?
This is the 49th episode, which means the next episode is episode 50. And not only that, it's our 1-year anniversary.
We were married a year ago?
No. Although I will say it, we are coming up on our 18th anniversary of being a couple, which is pretty wild. So it's our 1-year anniversary in the next episode. For that reason, we are currently running a poll, which will be over tomorrow. So, between 4 films. So we don't know what our next film is going to be. It is one of the following 4. Right. Okay, it is Thursday, March 3rd as we're recording this. We watched the movie last night. This won't come out until next week, which is like going to be, I don't know, like the 10th or something like that. All right. So March 17th is our 50th podcast.
Right.
I will not know until tomorrow, March 4th, what that episode is. So I can't tell you what the next episode is.
You could always write in a Rutger Hauer film.
I'm not doing that.
I'm just saying.
We're not watching a Rutger Hauer movie.
Fandom, you can make a change.
You might get your wish and get Highlander, okay? because that is one of the choices. So it might be Highlander. It might be Footloose.
He's not in Highlander.
Oh. Can I finish? You have made me derail this sentence 5 times. All right. Highlander. Footloose. Say anything. You haven't seen it. It's Cameron Crowe. We liked Fast Times at Ridgemont High. What? Anyway, and finally, Strange Brew. You've seen Strange Brew.
I've seen Strange Brew. I've seen Highlander.
We had Highlander. You tried to show it to me once and the tape broke, and that's why we've never seen it.
Yeah.
It was VHS. That's how long we've been together. We were still watching videotapes. Okay? We're old. So, it's going to be one of those 4. I won't know until March 4th, at which point this episode will have already come out. So, having said all that, until next week.
I ate garbage last night, Barbara, and loved it.
I was hoping you would say that.